You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market updates and trading strategies. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block with your host, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, and co-hosts Alex the Viceroy Jacobson from Options Express, Uncle Mike Tosaw from RCM Asset Management, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi, and Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com. The Option Block is brought to you by Options Express by Charles Schwab. Don't spend time worrying about your broker at Options Express by Charles Schwab. Security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets. Established financial stability. Options Express by Charles Schwab lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit www.optionsexpress.com to open your free account. Options Express by Charles Schwab is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Option Block. We are, of course, everyone's favorite bi-weekly source for all things options related. A little bit of wit, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of education, a little bit of analysis, throw in some unusual activity, sprinkle on some listener mail there, and put the cherry on top, a dash of wit, and you have the Option Block. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as from this here ever-expanding Options Insider Radio Network, a legion of places to find all this great programming, including iTunes, Stitcher, Aha Mobile, the OptionsInsider.com, most of our partner websites here on the old network, as well as our mobile app available for iOS, Android, and the Fire OS. Instantly stream all 300-plus episodes of the Option Block. Then if you have a few you want to listen to later, you want to catch up on a topic we discussed or a debate we had or an educational section we had, well, then you can download those for offline listening, maybe on your commute to work or perhaps on a plane ride or working out, whatever the case may be. A lot of great places to use this content and learn something while you're doing something else. Always a great use of your time. And of course, that app available for iOS, Android, and the Fire OS. I think you're going to like it. All right, and joining me on the old program today, we have my usual boon companion, starting off with the man of many hats, a.k.a. the Viceroy himself, none other than Mr. Alex Jacobson from Options Express by Charles Schwab. Alex, welcome back to the show, sir.
Good to be here today, Mark. I had a client explain to me today that going down on light volume is like going up. So today, apparently we were up, but we were actually down on light volume.
We were up strong today, I guess, if you follow that logic. I guess, if you're a bull, you'll say whatever to make the pain go away on days like today. Interesting viewpoint. Speaking of diehard bulls, we are also joined by the man from the mountains himself, none other than Uncle Mike Tosaw from RCM Asset Management. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the show, sir.
Always a pleasure to be here, and that's a good analogy. If you're down just a little bit on light volume, it is like being up. So what the heck?
Yeah, doesn't hurt, right? Doesn't count at the end of the day. It's kind of like a do-over, a mulligan in the market sense.
A mulligan. There you go, Al. That's a new promotion for Options Express. We will give you a market mulligan.
Yes, one free mulligan for every account.
Yeah.
Pick your day.
I like it. I could use a few of those in my trading career. All right. And speaking of a man who could use a few mulligans, we are joined last but not least by the Rock Lobster, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the program. Could you have used a few of those mulligans today, perhaps?
I don't think I did anything today that was too bad. Didn't Hillary get a mulligan for cattle trading? Didn't she get like
Yeah.
multiple mulligans?
Something like that. Well, she got to keep the money, and then the trade didn't really hurt her too much, I guess, afterwards. So I guess that's probably the best case of all scenarios.
It's kind of a synthetic mulligan.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, today, an interesting day. I think it feels like there's sort of strange tension in the market where stocks, I think, still have that want to go up, and that this kind of geopolitical stuff kind of, creating quite a little tug on the market. And today it kind of felt like an up day, even though it was a down day. So I'll go with that client who said a down day on light volume is like an up day. What the heck?
What you're saying is you're the guy who actually called into the Viceroy today. That was you.
I did. I wanted to see what he sounded like with his hat on, and it was impressive. It was impressive.
Very impressive indeed. All right, to parse all of that up day in today's down day action, let's dive right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block. This is indeed the portion of the old program where we break down the activity, what was going on in today's markets, what caught our eye, what was lighting up the old tape. And it wasn't a heck of a lot, as we alluded to earlier in the show there. A slight down day, which is akin to an up day, depending on your point of view. S&P closing down about 1/4 of a percentage point or so, or nearly 5 handles to 1973.63. The Dow off about 1/3 to, or about almost 50 handles to 17.051. And the Qs off the least of the bunch, only off a fraction of a percentage point today. So the Qs, the winner in this slight up day. And of course, actually trading up was the old VIX cash, nearly a handle to 12.76 on the day. That works out to nearly 6% on the day. So some interesting stuff, some more stuff to watch after the close. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's dive into what caught our collective eye in today's activity. Starting off with you, Uncle Mike, what caught your eye in the day that was this very aggressive yet slight up day / down day?
A slight up day, yet it's a down day. Man, you're quite the politician. For someone who hates politics, you do pretty good at it, Mark, I tell you.
Don't give me any ideas, sir.
The only thing that I'm seeing right now is my beloved Apple. It's down 49 cents on the day. And so going into earnings, I think we just had them a couple minutes ago, or wait, it's tomorrow. I don't know. But going into earnings, what I'm looking to do with that, I'm just long stock, long put, got out of a calendar spread with which I was in. And so just kind of gearing up for the big announcement tomorrow on it. And everything else, there really wasn't a lot of movement in BBI land. So not too much going on today from my standpoint.
All right, Mr. Andrew, we got some earnings cooking after the bell. We'll get to those in a second. But what caught your eye today in amongst today's activity, and what lit up the tape over there in the pit chat today, Mr. Rock Lobster?
We actually had a hard time looking at some, we looked at Google, maybe some interesting double calendar type action in there. Looking at the vol products, just an absence of premium in with a month to go. So it just like I said, everything feels very hung. The market doesn't really know what it, normally you should see something kind of is stretching or people are bidding for vol. Today, it just didn't feel like there was any sellers of the volatility futures, really. Just buyers a lot of this is just what might happen. So we haven't gotten that VIX to pull back down to like 11.5 or 11, where we got that magical mark last Wednesday. So, we traded above 13 for a while today. So there was a bid for vol, there was a bid for options. And, we opened down a little bit and but spent the rest of the day just sort of trying to claw way back. Again, the earnings feel like they are still better than everybody has anticipated. However, the pale or pallor of like these geopolitical stuff is kind of banging it down right now. And I think if that gets out of the way, which is I think why vol isn't really going down, people are looking for some sort of a little gap or a bounce or something, a little snap somehow. I don't know. They're looking for a good reason to do it. It's just hasn't happened yet.
And Mr. Alex, round out our analysis here. What caught your eye in today's activity?
Well, there were only a couple things that were kind of lighting up the tape. Crude had a big day today, up almost 2%. But again, given what's going on geopolitically, that's not surprising. The other thing, when I queried Grigas on the equity desk today, he said the only thing that seemed to be happening was social networking was getting a little pop today. That's Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And Baidu had a pop today. But other than that, it was a very, very quiet day. Pretty much quiet all around up here.
Well, then let's roll on into the after hours activity today. It is indeed the heart of earnings season. Last week, we saw a lot of big names reporting, and that continues this week as well. Going to kick things off after the bell with one of my favorites. We are recording, of course, listeners, playing the home game on Monday, July 21st. You're hearing this on Tuesday, the 22nd. And one of my favorites, the stealth apple, not so stealth anymore today, Chipotle, closing today just a hair shy of $5.90, $5.89.93 to be exact. But that was all in anticipation of the earnings after the bell, and so far they seem to be out of the gate like a rocket, up nearly 50 handles. Looks like in the after hours, actually a little bit over 50 handles now. So just an aggressive move to the upside. Pulling up here, the weekly 590 straddle went out 40 at 44 today. So even with those relatively inflated levels, still not enough to adequately convey this entire move. I hate to use terms like vol in a weekly name like this, but that is an 86 vol in the front month for what it's worth. Mr. G, we'll start with you. You said you guys are looking at Google. No love for Chipotle going into earnings today, huh?
We just didn't get to it. We didn't get to Chipotle going. We don't, unless there's we see some crazy edge for earnings trades, and we've seen some lately. I mean, just by and large, we kind of, we stay away from them for the most part, unless, you own some stock and you want to protect it through the earnings or something like that. But yeah, nothing really fantastic caught us except for, like I said earlier, you're kind of getting these, earnings that I think mostly on the kind of we'll just call them the brand name stocks have been surprising to the upside. So at some point I figure maybe the market's already priced a lot of this in, but as far as Chipotle, no, we didn't have nothing fantastic. We tried to find something for Netflix at the end of the day, and just we couldn't pick up anything in there either. So again, kind of a ho-hummy day in that respect.
Yeah, looks like the market tended to agree with you. Chipotle lighting it up from an options perspective, doing about 11,000 contracts a day. Lately, averaging that number, that's pretty low, but most names are low these days. Doing 4x that, about 44,000. Exactly split 1-to-1 calls and puts. So usually going into an earnings event like this, you'd see some bias in the option paper in terms of direction. Didn't see any of that at all going into Chipotle today. So the market kind of agreeing with you, Andrew. There's no one clear sentiment, no one clear trade lining up there in Netflix that they could take advantage, of Chipotle that they could take advantage of. Speaking of Netflix, they also are coming out after the bell today, closing today 451.84, up about nearly 8 handles in the day's session, nearly 2%. And this at the money straddle here right at the 450 weekly, going out right around $36 or so here in the after hour. So as they are wont to do in the old Widowmaker, pricing in a pretty aggressive move. And so far, it looks like the number is out. And so far, it seems like of the two, Chipotle and Netflix, Chipotle definitely the leader from an aggressive move perspective. Netflix only up about 7 and change in the after hours right now. So again, we'll see. We looked at Google early last week as well, and that seemed like it was dramatically underperforming in terms of net premium outlaid going into the event, and it did pretty well after the fact. So there could still be a movement to come here tomorrow morning on the open, but we'll have to wait and see. Alex, a lot of people over there at OREX, I know traditionally are fans of Netflix. It came off, obviously, after Netflix itself came off aggressively. It seems to have come back into most favorite status. You see a lot of action over there in terms of Netflix today?
Yeah, it's still a top 20 here. It's interesting because, when I talk to John Grigas, who runs the desk, we do have sort of a whole cadre of people who will buy the really far out of the money stuff on the earnings. seeing a lot of that right now. Ironically, more into Amazon this week than Apple. I wonder if Apple's almost becoming mainstream. But he had over last week the regular expiration. He had people starting to position already in some strikes that I think those of us at Option Pros would kind of cringe. And of course, when it posts earnings and those things go 20 points in the money, we as Option Pros are going to look at one another and go, oh, well, that's why people do it. So more so in Amazon for this week than Apple, though.
Yeah, it seems like just judging by the degree of leaks coming out of Apple these days, most of the news seems to be known. The iWatch, such as it is delayed. The new phone's going to have a giant screen and all these other things that are coming out. The frequency of the leaks coming out of Apple these days really seems to take a lot of the former surprise and the big movements we see out of that, whereas Amazon seems to be the other side of the fence. They're surprising people left and right these days. With the exception of that phone was leaked pretty aggressively very early on. But other than that, they seem to be making a lot of moves. Kindle Unlimited, whether you like it or not, they're making a lot of aggressive moves that are taking people by surprise, hence perhaps some of these crazy outliers we're seeing here in Amazon. I'm looking here at some of the Amazon paper while we're talking here. Alex, someone gobbling up AUG 485s today, 200 and change out there, and that's not even that far out. So people are playing up to some relatively, shall we say, optimistic strikes out there in Amazon. We'll have to wait and see later this week if those come to pass. You're right, Alex. We look at those and we tisk, and then they blow through them like it's no tomorrow. And people say, what are you poo-pooing that for? So there you go. I suppose that's what makes the market, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Apple is cool.
Cool.
Don't let them deny it. Everyone made fun of me for Apple the first run up. They make fun of me for the second run up. Once again, Apple is cool. That's the message for today.
Yeah, you can take solace in all those bucks you're reeking, all those profits you're making off Apple. That'll make the words heard that much less, sir, I think.
Apple is cool. That's the message for today.
All right. I think with that burned into our brains, we'll keep on rolling right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, that funky tunes means it's time once again for the old Odd Block, the portion of the show we break down the weird, the wild, the downright unusual activity that we're seeing lighten up the old options market today. Going to kick things off out there in the land of steel, in particular Steel Dynamics Inc., ticker symbol STLD. And they closed today $20.76, up about $2 or 11.7% on the day. So a fairly aggressive upside move here in good old STLD. This is the name that does just here shy of 1,000 contracts a day. So from an odd block perspective, that's lighting up the tape and doing 23,000 today. So 23x that. Pretty sizable stuff out here in STLD. And what do we see in STLD today? Well, surprise, some call buyers. I know you never heard that from us before here in the old Odd Block listeners, but we saw some today, a little bit maybe different than usual, not 5, 10, 20% out of the money, not Alex's 100 handles out of the money in Amazon type out of the money call buying. These are almost at the money. In particular, we focused our attention over here at the Options Insider today on the Nove 21s. Again, just 25 cents or so out of the money. We saw a block of them going up this morning at 1,307 to be precise, for 75 cents. This is opening paper, only 28 contracts open on that strike. That was one large block. Later on, we saw more people piling in, over 7,000 more coming in to the tune of 8,379 by the time we were done on that strike. Again, pretty much all of those buys, all of those gobbling up those calls to the tune of prices around there. By the end of the day, by the time the underlying movement was factored in and all the call buying, those calls went out $1 at $1.10. So looking pretty good already here in good old STLD. And I mentioned they're doing 23x the volume. It was just an active day across the board for this name. As you might imagine, listeners, any day when you move 11% or so, nearly 12%, you're going to have some paper, including a bunch of AUG 18 puts going up 3,300 times as well. So some fairly sizable trades. SEP 21s also lighting it up to the tune of 2,760. All of that opening, 0 contracts open on that strike. So interesting stuff across the board here. Mr. Rock Lobster, what's your take on the plethora of paper out here in STLD?
I think somebody needs them some steel. That's all I can say. It feels it has kind of like that. I'm not going to say a newsletter type trade to it, but it felt like it had some of that. The early paper was fairly larger size, and then a lot of smaller size went up on the day. But I mean, 8,000 contracts all in scattered blocks with most of it buying. And they're saying earnings are today after the close. So it feels like the earnings came out during the day sometimes, or they pre-announced something like that. But, the move in general was, I mean, somebody wants to buy these things. And, it's kind of, what is high vol when you're at the money and you're that far out, in November. So the stock doesn't have a huge range. I think they're a little expensive, but, people are right already. So it's hard when you pay 3/4 for them and they're already trading for $1.10 by the end of the day. Somebody's got to be happy about that. So, but it just looks like straight up buyers thinking there's a lot more upside left in this stock. It's the simple answer on that one.
Yeah, these guys not wanting to claim their mulligan today, that's for sure. This trade going their way already. Right, I neglected to mention they do have earnings today after the bell. Looks like they're essentially unched still, so probably hasn't come out yet. Either that or you're right. This has all the hallmarks of the earnings move happening intraday, so probably not a lot to expect.
And this is a giant move for the stock.
Yeah, exactly. So interesting stuff. Speaking of interesting stuff, we're going to keep on rolling into our next victim here in the old odd block. This is everyone's favorite, Orexigen Therapeutics, ticker symbol OREX. Closing today, $5.39, essentially unched on the day. This is the name that does about 4,400 contracts. So from an odd block perspective, this is blowing the doors off most of the names we talk about that do 200, maybe 400 contracts a day. And then blowing those doors off again, doing nearly 23,900 contracts to be precise, going up here in OREX, and pretty much all of that with the handful of others going up on other strikes. But pretty much the lion's share of that activity was in a pretty sizable SEP spread. And we saw 10,000 of the SEP 5/7 call spreads going up here for 72 cents. Again, open interest 0 on both strikes. Looked like paper was buying, so coming in, buying the 5, selling the 7. Listeners 10,000 times. Went up in 2 very large blocks, about a 5,000 or so each. Again, this is a sizable trade for this name. Doesn't do a heck of a lot of paper, certainly nowhere near this type of volume. Interesting stuff here, a little bit different than our typical out-of-the-money call buy here, Andrew. Here is an in-the-money call buy offset by an out-of-the-money call buy. So a wee bit of difference here.
Yes, I think, Mark, we looked at this earlier, and we thought this trade was kind of dopey just because you're buying the SEP 5 call, the stock is trading 539, and you sell the 7 against it. My question is why? Why would you buy a SEP 5 call for $1 and then sell the 7 against it? So you can make 3 cents on the whole trade. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me why you would even bother selling that upside call. I mean, yeah, granted, you saved a couple of cents, but you're buying a $2 call spread for 72 cents. So, and as we all know, how long it's going to be before you get all that extra money for selling that extra call. So like in this case, I don't know how much, maybe just to get the trade done, how much that really saved you to get it, Anyway, it looks like kind of a dopey call spread to me. Of course, the stock will probably trade $9 and the guy will make all his money. But it feels like if you want to get long on this one, just buy the call and just let it happen.
Just let it happen. Don't sell that premium. Buy the preem, live the dream, right, sir?
Well, you're going to spend the money. But yes, that's what I would think. But what do I know?
You're such a degenerate juice buyer, sir.
Only sometimes.
All right, moving on. Speaking of degenerate names, this next one here certainly may fall into that category, depending on your opinion of this brand of shoe wear. This is Crocs, ticker symbol CROX, of course, the infamous makers of those essentially plastic shoes that people can't seem to get enough of these days. An odd thing, but c'est la vie. Crocs. I can't hold this one in too much disregard because we have fond memories of this name back at Insider, back at the wee early days, the dawn of the Options Insider, when we had just launched the site and the network was still fledgling, and we were looking at their website, and I didn't know much about web publishing at the time, and I was looking at, we had 100 plus people on the website today. My God, that's so much traffic. And the first time we ever crossed that 1,000 visitors threshold was when we posted an unusual activity alert on Crocs. People just couldn't get enough of it. They devoured it, and it sent us skyrocketing over the then unprecedented level of 1,000 visitors on the website. And that was a huge moment for us. So I always hold Crocs in high regard for that and people's fascination with these ridiculous shoes because they've brought so much joy to us here at Insider. Crocs, of course, closing today, $14.84. It's highlighted big in red on my screen, which means it's halted now for earnings in the after hours. And what we saw today going into the earnings was, surprise, some call buyers. In particular, it was the AUG 15s that caught everybody's eye. These are the essentially at the money strike here in August. So what we profiled it on the site this morning, we profiled it 696 going up for prices of about 65 cents here, paper buying again. By the end of the day, roughly 10x that, 6,564 going up on this strike with open interest of just 1,000. The stuff we profiled this morning went up in one large block, but again, the rest of the paper filtered in throughout the day in subsequent blocks of substantial size. No surprise, people gobbling up these calls, bidding up the vol, and everything else you might expect going into earnings. Mr. G, walk us through this call buying explosion out here in Crocs.
Yes. So basically just lots of scatter paper buying these 15 calls. They're up. Looks like they closed up about a dime. And somebody had to get some Crocs. So maybe they like the new high heel Crocs that are coming out. So
do they really have high heel Crocs?
They do. I
guess I'm behind on my plastic footwear trends.
Well, I think my wife got them in Boston once. They're really comfortable. They don't look like Crocs, to be honest. They look like something.
So wait,
else.
You're wearing high heel Crocs, Andrew?
That is correct.
I knew things were a little bit different up there in Maine.
I knew that Mark said there was a height requirement here on the option block, so I wanted to get as tall as Tosaw. I don't think I was tall enough at 6'3". I needed to go like to 6'7" or something because Tosaw was a lineman or something like that.
I'm only 6'2", so you're wearing high heels. I'll just be quiet now out of respect for the block.
Somebody else is going to be wearing high heels after Crocs takes off on earnings. They're going to be buying somebody some high heels, quite possibly here.
High heels are from a fruit company.
So that's my little.
I don't even know what that comeback was about. That's all I got.
Somebody wants to get long Crocs. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's kind of funny for a brand, when the brand's biggest move is to pivot away from what the brand is known for. Always perhaps a good sign that things are working well and robustly. But hey, this guy gobbling up at the money calls, so maybe he knows something we don't. Maybe he's just a devotee of those high-heeled Crocs. Just even saying that, I can't keep a straight face. All right, let's move on before I crack up yet again into another one we haven't touched on in quite a while. This is CytRx Corporation, but not the one you're thinking of. This is CYTRX, ticker symbol CYTR. Maybe that's CytRx, how they pronounce that. Either way, it's annoying. Closing today, $3.62, essentially unched on the day. And what we saw was essentially a bit of a roll. This time, not up though, just out. It was the DEES March 5 call spread going up when we profiled it about 1,300 times, and that was a little bit more, went up throughout the rest of the day. That was pretty much the lion's share of it. Went up in two large blocks. Looked like paper is buying March, selling DEES. About nearly 10,000 open on the DEES 5 strikes. It looks like this guy is just taking some of it off and rolling it on out to March. Perhaps more to come. We'll see on this one. All opening paper out here in March to the tune of about 1,400 contracts. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, take us home with this roll, not up, but just out here in good old CytRx, whatever you want to call it here.
We'll just call it some funky biotech company.
There you go.
Yep, it looks like closing. There's somebody starting to roll a position. So that's what it feels like. About little over 1,000 contracts, 1,333 to be precise. Just trying to get it done, get out to March. I guess whatever news they're waiting for has not come out yet. So they're going to go a little farther out, looking for the big biotech home run that we know is guaranteed to all people who buy out of the money calls in a biotech stock.
That's why you trade them, right? That's pretty much the whole purpose of them, is to have massive pops.
Exactly. You know, they go from $3.62 to $10 and you make a gajillion dollars. So that apparently is for this biomedical research and development company specializing in oncology.
Aren't they all?
That's what. Plus, I love the names: tamibarotene and Bofitinib Inno-206. Whatever that is. The company's tumor-targeted doxorubicin conjugate.
My favorite.
There you go.
My favorite. The best of the conjugates.
The best of the doxorubicin conjugates.
You know this guy is really certain in himself when he's rolling on out to March. Dees wasn't enough. He needs a little bit more time. He needs to go to March for things to work his way. So there you go, listeners.
For the magic to happen.
Yes, exactly. Perhaps not one you need to rush out and follow right away, but one to keep an eye on. We'll see how this plays out here in CytRx, whatever you want to call it, as we move on into the Viceroy's favorite block. Yes, it's time for the Express Block.
The Express Block, brought to you by Options Express by Charles Schwab. Options Express by Charles Schwab lets you trade where and when you want for every level of trading. From advanced charting, free daily trading ideas, and free educational resources. Options Express by Charles Schwab is the online broker for all traders. Best of all, Options Express by Charles Schwab lets you trade stocks, options, and futures all in a single account on powerful yet easy-use trading platforms, including mobile devices. Visit optionsexpress.com for your free account. Options Express by Charles Schwab is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
All right, everybody, you know what time it is. It's time for the Viceroy to don his choicest hat from his collection and guide us on a behind-the-scenes tour into the land known as Options Express by Charles Schwab. Mr. Viceroy, take it away, sir. The throne is yours.
Thanks. So, as we mentioned earlier, it was kind of a quiet day today. And when I went and surveyed the desks, talked a little bit about some of the activity. I got an IM about 2 minutes ago from Griga saying he forgot to throw in Herbalife, and apparently Herbalife got plastered today. And I guess Ackman and Icon were hugging each other at the Adding Alpha conference last week, but apparently there's news that Ackman will be releasing another scathing expose of Herbalife tomorrow, Tuesday. I don't know if it'll go up before the show goes up, but relatively quiet day today. And whenever we do have quiet days, I like to take some of the time in the Express Block and talk a little bit about tools up here. I mean, two tools we've showcased a lot lately have been the walk limit. And just to reacquaint the listeners, walk limit is essentially a product here at OREX that lets you walk a single leg option or a spread option up or down, depending on if you're doing a debit or a credit. If you're doing a debit trade, it allows you to start at the lowest possible debit you think, and then it electronically works its way up. So let's say you're trying to buy an option that's $1.10, $1.15, and it's something that can trade in pennies, but you don't want to pay the $1.15. Walk limit would let you start the auction to try to buy at $1.10, leave your order out there for up to 10 seconds. If it doesn't fill, it'll cancel, walk it up to $1.11. Same thing, leave it out there for up to 10 seconds. By the way, you can specify the time increments. You can specify the price increments, and it'll essentially work the order. And the reason I like talking about walk limit is I know a lot of people focus on how much money it saves them, but I also like to focus on last Friday was regular way expiration, and many of us who trade will have a handful of positions going off on expiration Friday. And whether we should leave them to the last few minutes of trading or not, many of us, and I say us and include myself in this, will have multiple orders working near the close on an expiration Friday. And walk limit lets you kind of autopilot those in the sense that it will work them within the limits you establish. Very cool tool. If you're not familiar with it, we do webinars on it every week. I showcase it when I do Idea Hub webinars. I'll talk a little bit about webinar dates in a little bit, but that's what was going on today.
You mentioned our old friend Herbalife here. I just pulled it up while we were talking, and you're right. They did have a relatively robust day, all of it to the downside, closing down 54.02, down nearly 7 handles or about 11% on the day, and option volume lighting it up yet again. They're averaging lately about 11,000 contracts a day, lighting it up to the tune of 165,000 contracts. And unlike what we talked about earlier with Chipotle, where there was no clear bias, a clear bias to this paper, about 116,000 puts to only 48,000 calls, about 2.4 to 1. So aggressive downside paper. No surprise given the sell-off and given the potential news. You're right, the hedge funds are letting it be known. I love how they write right here in this article, the street caught wind of a scathing presentation. Like, they didn't leak that because they're not short. I love it. They just caught wind of this presentation. So c'est la vie, interesting stuff. Herbalife, known to be delivering on the vol front on a regular basis these days. So if you're looking for a little bit of crazy in your portfolio, Herbalife, certainly the place to go these days. Speaking of a little bit of crazy, it's time to roll on out of the Xpress Block and roll right on into the strategy block, where Uncle Mike can tell us how to get a little bit of crazy in our own portfolios.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, listeners, you know the Strategy Block. This is, of course, the portion of the show where Uncle Mike comes on down from the mountains, stone tablets, bubble pipe, smoking jacket in hand to dispense some options, wit, and or wisdom. Uncle Mike, I'm ready to get a little bit crazy. I'm ready to go a little bit wild. I'm ready to swing for the fences. I know that's right up your alley, so what do you have for me, sir?
Let's swing for the fences, baby. I'm ready to get after it myself. A couple things. I want to go through a little update as to some of the things that we're doing right now with some of the option strategies, why we're doing it. And I want to just kind of go through an expiration day lesson that I feel inspired to talk about today.
And then you'll tell me how to load up on upside calls, like 7-8 to 1 ratio or so?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Just buy calls.
Okay, cool. That's what I want to hear. That's why I tune in.
Or I mean, puts. Well, I don't know. One of the two. You figure it out. Quick lesson that I want to go through before I get into what we're doing. Let's say that you have a spread on, a vertical spread going into expiration Friday, and it's on an equity. It's not on a cash settled option. It is on an equity. Let's say, for example, that you are long XYZ stock, and I know I've done this lesson on the show before, but I'm hoping that it resonates because I know someone this happened to recently. It was not me, but I just I felt inspired to just talk about this today to share with our listeners. You're long XYZ, the 50 call, and you're short the 55 call. And it's 3 o'clock Chicago time on Friday. The market is closed. And so with that, the stock is now at $52. So with that being said, the 55 call is going to expire worthless, most likely. However, the 50 call is going to actually expire in the money, and you're going to be long 100 shares of XYZ stock come Monday morning. Now, with that being said, understand the rules of what you can do after market on a Friday. You have the ability to exercise options. You have the ability to send in an order to not exercise an option. But the bottom line is that you have choices even after the market closes. Can you sell the option? No. And that's a choice that you do not have. And that's a choice that I personally don't like not having. So that's why, my opinion, I like to get out of all of my option positions before expiration so I don't run into situations like this. Now, The 55, let's assume that the 55 call does indeed expire worthless and the stock stays at the same level even through the aftermarket period to where you can exercise your options. Most brokers, I believe it's 2 hours that you can still do this aftermarket. But let's assume that XYZ stock stays below 55, 55 call expires worthless. You then are now long 100 shares of XYZ stock over the weekend. And you're thinking, oh, well, I just bought a call spread, so I just have a limited risk. And the only thing that I can risk is that $200 or $300 or whatever it was that I paid for that call spread. So I'm fine. Not necessarily. Let's assume that you didn't close out that call going into the close. You're now long those 100 shares of stock, and the stock then dips down on Monday morning pre-market down to $22 a share. Well, instead of just losing those $200 or $300 that you spent, you are out $3,000 right there on the spot. Why is that? You're long the stock. You're taking on the weekend risk by letting your option go into the close on Friday afternoon. Now, with that being said, let's assume for a second that it's a credit spread. Same scenario. Let's say that XYZ stock's at 50 and you sold the 45 put and you simultaneously bought the 40 put. And going into the close, the stock is at 43 and you take no action. Well, let's assume the stock then stays the same through the aftermarket period and the 40 put expires worthless. You're going to get put those 100 shares of the stock at 45 because that short put is in the money. Same scenario. Over the weekend, what's going to happen is that you're going to take on that weekend risk. And if the stock goes down to zero, you and $4,000 are going to go to zero right along with it. So understand what weekend risk actually is, because it's something that's very real. Now, if an option is 1 penny in the money or greater, it is automatically exercised unless, and this is a big thing here, unless you call your broker and give them an order to not exercise it. So let's say that you're just long a call and you're long the 50 call on XYZ stock and the stock's trading right at $50 and 1 penny. And if that's the case, you're thinking, you know what, it's a penny. I don't want to exercise the option, but the bid-ask spread is negative 50 cents by 50 cents. There's no way that I'm going to trade out of this thing. And you don't want anything to do with that option. You don't want to take on that risk over the weekend. Call your broker and let them know you do not want this exercised. You have that ability, because if you don't call them and the stock's at $50 and 1 penny, they're going to automatically exercise it for you. And by doing that, you're then taking on the risk of owning the stock. So have an understanding of how expiration risk works and what you can do to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. Bottom line is this, folks. You get out of all these nickel options and that type of thing before the close, these problems do not affect you. And I would encourage any active trader to do so, just because the weekends sometimes aren't very friendly times. As traders, we're out of control enough with what the market does. This is the one way with which you can actually be in control and being in cash or being in an option for the next week over the weekend and not have to worry about what happens in the after hours options exercise market, so to speak. Now, a little bit about what we're doing at RCM right now in terms of the trading. Like I mentioned earlier in the opening part of the show, with Apple right now, we're long stock and we're just long a put at this point. We're long an October put. And so basically what we're doing is we're just waiting for the earnings announcement. We're going to see what happens with it. What we have been doing, let's kind of go through some of the trades with which we've been doing. Apple has been in kind of a channeling period recently. And so what we have been doing is we've been long the October 80 put as our hedge leg, so to speak, along with being long the stock. And so with that, we've been trying to finance that with calendar spreads. We have been long the October 85.71 put. And we've also been selling the August 85.71 put against it. And basically what's been happening is Apple's been going up. And so then the short put goes down in value. We buy to close that because there's hardly any value left in it. Apple goes down, we sell that same put. I feel like a channeling stock trader over the course of the last 2 or 3 weeks with that short put that we've been doing all the time. But it's worked. We've gone to the well 3 times with it. And so I'm not going to complain about something working as such. So with that, what we did today was we closed out the October 80 put And now we have also reclosed out the August 85.71 put. So now we're simply long stock, long an October 85.71 put for the earnings announcement tomorrow, and we're just going to see what happens. A couple other things with which we're doing at this point. We are not short any premium right now on SPY. Reason being is that I was very tempted to sell some of it on Thursday when we had the dip in the marketplace, and I was thinking about doing it on Friday as well, but I decided not to. And the reason why is because I didn't want to take on the weekend risk. So likely this week we'll probably sell some more premium in one way, shape, or form on SPY to finance our long puts or hedging our positions with, as well as our financing our long calls on SPY. So that is kind of an update as to what we're doing right now, and everyone have a great day.
How do we know you were going to hover your mouse button over those puts last week and then you weren't going to pull the trigger? That just seemed like how it was going to play out.
Didn't want to do it. I'd still do the same thing. I did not want to go into the weekend short puts after last week's events.
I can't really fault you too much not to blast out some downside puts when boots are on the ground in Gaza and there's rockets raining down and there's planes being shot out of the sky. Maybe not the weekend you want to have some literal weekend risk on your books.
What's the old saying? Better to be a live chicken than a dead duck, right?
That is indeed the case. Words to live by in the old strategy block. And now we're going to keep on rolling right on into our final segment. Yes, it's time, listeners, for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, it is indeed earnings season, so let's just check right in again with some of the names we were watching at the top of the show. CMG Chipotle still on the rise, up over 50 handles now, up about 54 here in the after hours, trading right around 644, nearly 645 at this point. So the rally continues out there in the stealth Apple, aka Chipotle. If this keeps up, Uncle Mike, it's going to be beyond the 7X level of Apple pretty soon, and there'll be no more stealth about it. It will have eclipsed your Cupertino name, at least in straight up stock value. All right, looking here at Netflix, also looking a little bit, actually giving up a little bit of the ghost here. It wasn't rallying as hard to begin with, and now coming off quite a bit. A bit of a disappointing earnings from a premium perspective, and a lot of people look to Netflix to rally hard or drop hard post earnings. Always a recipe for disaster when you go into earnings like that. And of course, right now we're hovering up about $4. So this is off a straddle that went out at about $35. So bear that in mind, listeners, when you're looking at here. Of course, still some time to play here, but not looking too good here for people who were loading up on some premium going into the earnings event. And of course, there's more stuff on the horizon, some big names on the docket. Microsoft coming out tomorrow. Some fruit company, I don't know, maybe you want to call Uncle Mike about that. They're also reporting tomorrow as well. Coming up later this week, Alex mentioned Amazon. People are already loading up to the upside out there in Amazon right now. So the crazies starting to dive in for Amazon already. They don't report till Thursday, the 24th. 24th also has Ford before the open, so bear that in mind. Last trading session for them will come on Wednesday. GM also on the 24th. So no shortage of fairly substantial names coming out. So a lot of interesting stuff happening this week. Perhaps, Alex, we'll start with you. What are you watching for the rest of this week, sir?
I think you covered it. I think Apple and Amazon are going to be the big option stories this week. I think people need to take to heart Mike's advice about expiration. We've talked a lot on this show about the inability to trade options after hours and how you're sort of limited to the fact that you could maybe buy the stock or short the stock in after hours trading. Please be aware of the abilities of your brokerage house. If you're here at OX, there is a night desk, but you got to have some money in the account to do it. And you're not going to be able to trade out of the option. But I think this week, other than the geopolitical stories, it's going to be Apple and Amazon this week. And it's going to be an interesting trading week because of those two names.
Mr. Andrew, you are a big softy. Never met a Microsoft trade you didn't like, particularly buying premium. Are you really diving into Microsoft with both feet ahead of the earnings tomorrow? As we've said many times in the past, used to be the most reliable premium sale on the street. These days, not so much. Some stuff happening over there in softy land these days.
Yes, if you would have sold premium again, I think Microsoft's trading like 41.5 just a week ago. You would have lost already even before the earnings came out. So I think it's the 6th or 7th time in a row that Microsoft has done some sort of crazy pre-earnings rally that has blown through their earnings straddle prior to the earnings. Actually, the earnings have been, a mixed bag after that. I don't know. Microsoft, it's like just a long-term long for me. So what will happen? I don't know. Who knows? It feels like, it's not a $26 company anymore. Like that was last year. Now it's $44. So, you think about the kind of moves that old tech can make. I still think a lot of it is they're not really giving it any credit for the possibility that they can grow earnings. So as the world's growing, apparently these old tech companies are finding ways to grow earnings. So I expect to just see more of it. So again, I think by and large, earnings will continue to be decent. I think as most things with the geopolitical mess, unless we actually invade somewhere, it generally subsides after a while, as tragic as it all is, and volatility ends up coming down. So, probably seeing a little lower volatility by the end of the week. And maybe some stock owners have a couple more bucks in their pockets as these companies continue to report this quarter.
Yeah, Softy reporting some big layoffs earlier this week, or last week, I should say, in the street. Never saw a massive round of layoffs that didn't like rallying the stock appropriately and doing some size numbers today as well. Really unched on the day today, but still doing about almost 4x ADV, doing about 450,000 contracts out there in Microsoft.
That's like Bixville.
Yeah, big numbers out there in Microsoft these days. They're looking right now, if these numbers hold up going into earnings tomorrow, they're pricing in, and it looks like about a $2 straddle, so that's about roughly 5% that they're expecting here going into earnings. Of course, you still have a whole day left, so we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. But Mr. Rock Lobster, always a diehard softy at the end of the day. All right, take us home.
I just like the ones that go up.
There you go. That usually works pretty well. Speaking of people who like the ones that go up, Uncle Mike, take us home, sir. What are you watching? There might be some fruit company on your horizon tomorrow. I may be mistaken, though.
Yeah, this fruit thing. And just to add to it once again, folks, understand what you can do after market, especially if you're trading earnings and with what you're doing. But yeah, definitely watching Apple tomorrow. It's always a fun day when Apple has earnings right after the market, when just seeing what's going on, and just love watching it. And that's pretty much it for the time being. And that's what we're watching.
Then you can go back into hibernation until next quarter when they report again.
There you go.
All right. That's going to do it for the old Around the Block segment. It's also going to do it for this episode of the Option Block. But before I go, let's check in really quickly with each of my cohorts here on the old panel. See what they have cooking that may interest you. Starting off with you, Uncle Mike Tosaw. What's coming down the pike over there in the land of RCM Wealth Advisors and RCM Asset Management?
Well, just wanted to kind of add to the offer with which I threw out last week. A lot of advisors aren't able to work with people with smaller accounts. I can. Disadvantage of working with me is that you will have a phone relationship most likely, unless you're in the Chicago area. So you will never see me in a suit, which might be a good thing because I'm really not that good looking of a guy anyway. But nonetheless, even if you do have a smaller account, give me a call. I'm getting the second batch of calls in terms of since I put this offer out again. And so I've caught up on the first batch, now ready for the second batch, so to speak. So happy to continue to work with people and love working with everybody. Direct line is 312-212-3531 or send me an email at mtosaw@rcmam.com.
The other downside is that he will feverishly sling options on your behalf, listeners, so be prepared for that. He will work hard to pay for that theta. He won't sleep until your theta is covered. Is that your slogan over there?
I haven't slept in 10 years.
There you go, listeners. The ever-present challenge of paying for theta. Mr. Viceroy, what's coming down the pike over there in the land of OX by Charles Schwab?
Next live event is Saturday, August 9th at the Westin at the San Francisco Airport. That's Jimmy Rosanna and the crew. They do about 3/4 of a day. Great event. It's free. Webinars, I'll just showcase a couple. Wednesday this week, the 23rd, Mike Zaremski is going to do new customer futures orientation, showing off the features of the futures platform. After the close, I'm going to do Idea Hub. Haven't done an Idea Hub during the day in a long time. Did one last week in the evening, had great turnout. Idea Hub at 2:10 when I last checked it had 616 active ideas in it. So if you're not familiar with the Hub, come to one of the webinars. Thursday the 24th, Nina's going to do advanced order features and the walk limit. And speaking of earnings, on Thursday the 24th, Peter Lusk from the SIBO, from the Options Institute, my old shop, is going to do using options to trade earnings. All the events are free, even the in-person event. Come to optionsexpress.com, click on the Educate tab.
Good stuff. And take us home. Mr. Rock Lobster was coming down the pike over there in the land of the pit.
Well, we have our option boot camp in August, August 12th through the 16th. So if you want to see those, if you want to learn how to use all those cool tools that Alex has over there in OREX, besides their other education, you can come by us and get a nice idea of, basically how to manage option positions, how to use Greeks, how to use the tools that are available to you, and actually understand how all this kind of stuff works, all this theta stuff, all this getting long and getting short using options. But we do it again from like a trading market making point of view to help people sort of be able to diagnose what's going on. So that our boot camp, actually we're starting to fill up quite quickly too. So it is from August 12th to the 16th that week. It's about 8 hours of learning, and you're going to learn a lot one way or the other.
Get edumacated. That's your slogan, right?
Get edumacated, exactly.
All right. Uncle Mike won't sleep till he pays for your theta. Andrew, he'll get you edumacated. Good stuff. All right, and on behalf of the Viceroy and the Rock Lobster and Uncle Mike, and of course myself, I want to thank all of you out there in the listening audience for downloading and streaming and subscribing to the program, and for downloading the app. And of course, keep those questions coming. We'll get to them on Thursday, and we'll see you then right here on the Option Block.
The Option Block was brought to you by Options Express by Charles Schwab. Don't spend time worrying about your broker at Options Express by Charles Schwab. Security, stability, and account protection are the most important responsibilities to our customers. Secure account access, enhanced financial protection, entrusted with over $7 billion in customer assets, established financial stability. Options Express by Charles Schwab lets you trade with confidence. Stocks, options, and futures all in one account. Trade with a specialist. Visit www.optionsexpress.com to open your free account. Options Express by Charles Schwab is a member of FINRA, SIPC, and NFA.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.